All right, everyone. Tomorrow we'll be seeing basically what amounts to the last debate, probably between Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders. This will be the first time that they're sort of one-on-one because they changed the rules to keep Gabbard out because they didn't want to distract people with an unelectable candidate who would just trash everyone else, including the DNC. And it's funny, if you are part of a political party, but all you do is insult the leadership of that political party, you get screwed. It's almost like it's a little bit of comeuppance for someone who got a little bit too big for her britches, a little bit big of herself, full of herself. I think that describes Tulsi Gabbard, and her dwindling number of fans don't seem to get this. They think she's being uniquely bullied. She technically started it, and I'm not a Democrat or a fan of the DNC. Tom Perez is crazy. Nancy Pelosi's crazier. But they still run the party, and you still got to have a little bit of basic decorum and decency if you're going to be part of a profit-making political apparatus. And when it becomes clear that you're not viable anyway, it doesn't really fucking matter. Nobody at this point even fucking gives a damn. Joe Biden right now, in national polling, is fucking completely crushing Bernie Sanders. When Bernie fans, they always do this, well, Joe Biden's not electable. What does that say about Bernie? He can't even coalesce enough Democrats behind him to hit 40 in national polling. He's stuck at 36 right now. He's not that much higher up than some of the more mild peaks that Biden was at months ago, when he was the weak front runner at the time before Bernie Sanders swung the first few states. Biden's early peak was 42 points. When he had a peak many, many months ago, his hard peak, before which he regressed back to his long-term mean until, the field began to narrow, was in the low 40s. Well, Bernie Sanders isn't even at that. In some of the polls, he hits 40. Not in the aggregate, though. Biden's at 54, almost at 55. So more than half of the party is coalesced behind Biden. At a bare minimum, Bernie Sanders needs to swing about 10 points in the next debate tomorrow in order to make enough of a difference to have a chance of winning maybe one of the states on March 17th. The problem is this. Biden is running ahead of his aggregated polling total in all four of them, if we believe the polling. We have pretty good polling from two of them, from Arizona and Florida. We only have a little bit from Ohio and Illinois, but it conforms to the basic premise that these states have been uniquely targeted by Biden for long enough and have demographics amenable enough to Biden's message that it precludes Bernie Sanders from competing. If Bernie therefore wins the debate fairly handily, swings 10 points, ends up at 48 nationwide, is actually ahead of Biden, it probably still wouldn't give him those states. He would probably still narrowly lose. The problem is that at that point, if Biden can get fucked in a debate really hard, chocolate style, and still win all four of the primary states, including the last big prize, which is Florida. California and Texas have already voted. Illinois and Florida are sort of the big kahunas of the day. If Biden can trounce him anyway, by 5 or 6 points, regardless of what happens in the debate, the race is basically over. Because if that happens, then any loss from the debate simply is made up for in a bounce from winning 4 primaries at the same time. And the delegate lead that Biden would have would extend by about 100, even if it were close races. And that's probably not what's going to happen. Let's face it. At the debate, I predict this. Sanders will have a bit of an edge. His fans will crow a lot about it and how terrible Joe Biden is. Joe Biden's core fans will keep supporting Joe Biden. Independents will take a ballot and vote against socialism. And it'll be Super Tuesday all over again. And it really, at the end of the day, won't matter. If Biden underperforms in one state, he's just as like to overperform in another. Some of the polls in Florida have him up by 45 points in the state of Florida, partially because the entire expat population of Cuba hates Bernie Sanders' fucking guts. They will wade through a minefield in order to cast a ballot for Joe Biden in the Dem primaries, I think, at this point. I think Florida's got an open primary anyway. A lot of them will be independent voters. Hell, some of them are technically Republicans. Guess what? They're definitely going to be taking a Dem ballot. And I encourage them to. Everyone is encouraged in these states to vote for Joe Biden. Because we have to stop socialism. We have to stop my own state from looking like an ass on a national debate stage. Right now, the damage is limited because no one watches the Dem debates. But if Bernie Sanders gets up in front of Donald Trump in front of the whole nation and looks like an ass, which is exactly what would happen, it's not going to reflect very well on my home state. And third, Biden's demented. Watching him try to debate Donald Trump will be glorious. It will be, I promise you, it will be so much better. The debates in 2016 were good. Like in the second debate when Trump was sort of moving around the stage while Hillary Clinton was speaking and people were talking about how it was toxic masculinity. I enjoyed that. I thought that that was fucking hilarious. Or when he insinuated that if he won that Hillary Clinton would be in jail, which of course didn't happen. There's nothing actionable there. When the entire intel community refuses to prosecute her because they're afraid of getting Jeffrey Epstein, it becomes a little bit of a problem. They're afraid of hanging themselves with a roll of toilet paper by somersaulting off a 3-foot ledge. It's a big problem in prisons these days, especially among the politically connected. I expect that Joe Biden will be nominated, and it'll be hilarious. Because it'll be so funny watching him stutter and sputter and say crazy shit up on the national debate stage. Joe Biden's not a good debater. This is why I give the edge to Sanders tomorrow. It's just I don't think that it's going to make a big difference. At this point, a lot of that support between the candidates is hardened anyway. A lot of people, Biden has that aura of invulnerability back. And based just on the polling in the next 4 states, you'd have to have the biggest goddamn political statistical fluke of all time in order to envision a scenario where even a freshly minted debate winner, Bernie Sanders, going in with a tailwind, wins any of these states. At least, if he did, it would be by the slimmest of margins. Joe Biden has an insurmountable almost advantage of 18 points in national polling. And this is a 2-person race. Gabbard at this point isn't even counted in some of the polls, which is why she's precluded from the debate stage. I wonder which polls the Democrats will accept. Could it be the ones that leave off the person that constantly attacks other party members? That might be the case. It's a 2-person race, and Sanders can't get 40%. Now, Biden, of course, isn't hitting 60 because there's still a small group of undecided voters, but if his polling is above 50, it shouldn't matter anyway, unless there's a state where Bernie Sanders is structurally ahead. Here's the problem. Bernie Sanders has a structural deficiency in almost every part of the country now, except for parts of the rural West. That's the only part of the country that Bernie Sanders has outperformed in at any point in this race, and even then by a large margin. He's not even outperforming in New England. He lost his New England advantage. He barely won New Hampshire. It was a statistical tie with Buttigieg. He lost Maine. Dude, the only part of northern New England he carried was his home state, and that was only by 51%. Biden, in 3 states on Super Tuesday, Biden had a higher voting threshold than Sanders did in his own home state. And when Delaware comes to vote, of course, it'll be like 90% Joe Biden. Not that that matters. Nobody even knows where Delaware is unless they really love geography. I count myself as lucky that I can find it on the map of the United States. Couldn't tell you what goes on there. I'm pretty sure that it's actually a myth and that it's just a giant lake that's shaped like what we think Delaware is. Have you ever met a person from Delaware? Biden claims to be, but he could just as soon be from Mars. He could be a reptile person or something. That's about all. Peace out.